Have you ever wondered why some people seem immune to the arrows that life shoots at them? Why certain individuals can walk through storms of criticism, rejection, and betrayal without losing their center? Why they remain unshaken when others would crumble? Perhaps you've spent years building walls around yourself, trying to become stronger by becoming harder. Maybe you've attempted to numb yourself, to care less, to expect nothing so you can't be disappointed. You've told yourself that if you just stop feeling so much, if you just stop caring so deeply, then nothing will be able to hurt you. But what if I told you that this approach is not only wrong, it's the very thing keeping you vulnerable? Carl Jung discovered something revolutionary about human suffering. He understood that the people who truly cannot be hurt are not those who feel nothing. They are those who have learned to feel everything without being destroyed by it. Today, I'm going to share with you Jung's most profound insight about emotional invulnerability. Not the kind that makes you cold and disconnected, but the kind that makes you unshakable while remaining fully human. This is for you who are tired of being wounded by words that shouldn't matter. For you who feel like everyone else has thicker skin while you bleed from paper cuts. For you who want to become strong without becoming stone. Because what Jung discovered will change everything you think you know about protection, about strength, and about what it truly means to be invulnerable in a world that seems designed to hurt. Are you ready to discover the secret that will make nothing and nobody able to wound you again? Because once you understand this, you'll never be the same. The illusion of external wounds. You believe that what hurts you comes from outside. The harsh words, the unexpected betrayal, the cruel rejection, the indifferent silence. You've spent your life trying to control these external forces, managing how others see you, desperately attempting to avoid situations that might cause pain. But Jung saw through this illusion with devastating clarity. He understood that external events cannot wound you. They can only activate wounds that already exist within you. Think about this. Why does the same insult devastate one person while another barely notices it? Why does rejection destroy some people while others simply move on? Why do certain triggers send you spiraling while they leave others completely unaffected? The answer lies not in the external event, but in the internal landscape it encounters. Jung called this our complex, those clusters of emotions, memories, and beliefs that lie dormant in our unconscious until something in the external world awakens them. These complexes are like sleeping giants within us, and when they're triggered, they don't just influence our reaction. They become our reaction, that sharp pain you feel when someone criticizes you. It's not really about their words, it's about the voice inside you that has been saying the same thing for years. That devastating feeling of abandonment when someone leaves. It's not really about them going. It's about the terrified child within you who learned long ago that love is temporary. The cruel truth is that the world cannot give you anything you don't already possess, and it cannot take away anything you don't already fear losing. Every wound that others seem to inflict upon you is actually a wound you're inflicting upon yourself through the lens of your unhealed past. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But there's a deeper layer to this wisdom. Everything that hurts us about others reveals where we are still hurting ourselves. This is why some people can walk through the same situations that destroy you and emerge completely unscathed. It's not because they're stronger or more resilient. It's because they don't carry the same internal wounds that create resonance with external pain. But here's the revolutionary part. Once you understand this, everything changes. Because if the wound is within you, then so is the power to heal it. The shadow that feeds your pain. Most people spend their entire lives running from their own shadow, those parts of themselves they don't want to acknowledge, the pain they don't want to feel, the truths they don't want to face. Jung understood that this avoidance is what keeps us vulnerable. Every time you push away a painful emotion, every time you deny a difficult truth about yourself, every time you pretend you're fine when you're bleeding inside, you're feeding the very thing that makes you susceptible to external hurt. Your shadow contains all the rejected parts of yourself, the neediness you won't admit, the anger you won't express, the fear you won't acknowledge, the inadequacy you won't face. These rejected aspects don't disappear just because you ignore them. They go underground, where they grow in the dark and wait for the right moment to surface. And that moment always comes when someone else's words or actions align perfectly with your disowned truth. When someone calls you weak and you explode with rage, it's not their accusation that's wounding you, it's the part of you that believes it's true. When someone abandons you and you're devastated, it's not their leaving that's destroying you. It's your own belief that you're not worth staying for. Jung called this process projection. We see in others what we cannot see in ourselves, but there's a flip side to projection that most people miss. We're hurt by others only to the degree that their actions or words confirm our own hidden beliefs about ourselves. This is why healing requires the courage to turn inward, to face the shadow, to integrate what you've been rejecting. Because as long as there are parts of yourself that you cannot love, there will be people in the world who can wound you simply by reflecting those parts back to you. The path to invulnerability doesn't run away from your pain. It runs straight through it. Not to wallow in it, not to be defined by it, but to understand it so completely that it loses its power over you. Jung knew that the goal is not to eliminate your shadow, but to befriend it. When you can look at every rejected part of yourself with compassion rather than judgment, when you can own your flaws without being owned by them, something miraculous happens. The external world loses its power to devastate you. The alchemy of integration. Here's where Jung's genius truly shines. He understood that true invulnerability comes not from building walls, but from integration. Not from becoming invulnerable to pain, but from becoming unafraid of it. Integration is the process of bringing all the scattered pieces of yourself into conscious awareness. It's about acknowledging your neediness without being ashamed of it, owning your anger without being controlled by it, facing your fear without being paralyzed by it. This process is uncomfortable because it requires you to stop being who you think you should be and start becoming who you actually are. It means giving up the sanitized version of yourself that you present to the world and embracing the messy, complicated, beautifully human truth of your existence. But here's what happens when you begin this integration. You stop being surprised by your own reactions. You stop being hijacked by your emotions because you've made friends with them. You stop being wounded by others' opinions because you've already examined and accepted the truth they're pointing to. When someone criticizes you and you've already owned that criticism about yourself, their words lose their sting. When someone rejects you and you've already accepted your own imperfections, their rejection becomes information rather than devastation. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming undivided within yourself. When you're no longer split between the parts of yourself you accept and the parts you reject, you become whole. And wholeness is the ultimate protection. Think about water. It can't be wounded because it has no resistance. When you throw a stone at water, the water simply parts and then comes back together unchanged. This is what integration offers, the fluidity to let experiences pass through you without leaving permanent damage. But this integration requires something that most people are unwilling to give: total honesty with yourself. It requires looking at your own selfishness, your own cruelty, your own weakness without flinching. It requires admitting that you're not the person you pretend to be, and surprisingly, this admission is what sets you free. Because when you stop pretending to be perfect, you stop being vulnerable to the discovery of your imperfection. When you own your darkness, you stop being afraid of having it exposed. When you integrate your shadow, you become unshakable. The birth of authentic power. Most people confuse power with force, strength with hardness, invulnerability with numbness. But Jung understood that true power comes from a completely different source, from the integration of all aspects of yourself into a coherent whole. When you've faced your own demons, when you've owned your own darkness, when you've accepted your own limitations, you develop what Jung called authentic power. This is not the power to control others or circumstances, but the power to remain yourself regardless of what's happening around you. This authentic power has a quality that's immediately recognizable: presence. When you're no longer fighting internal battles, when you're no longer hiding from aspects of yourself, when you're no longer pretending to be someone you're not, your energy becomes available for something much more powerful than defense. It becomes available for presence. People feel this presence immediately. There's something magnetic about someone who is completely comfortable with themselves, who doesn't need your approval, who isn't trying to impress you or manipulate you. They're simply present, and that presence is more compelling than any performance. This is why integrated individuals seem immune to the games that devastate others. It's not because they don't care. It's because their self-worth doesn't depend on external validation. It's not because they don't feel, it's because they feel everything without being consumed by it. When your sense of self comes from within rather than from others' opinions, criticism becomes merely information. When your worth is established by your relationship with yourself rather than others' treatment of you, rejection becomes redirection rather than devastation. Jung believed that this integration creates what he called psychological immunity. Just as physical immunity protects your body from diseases without making you unconscious, psychological immunity protects your psyche from emotional wounds without making you unfeeling. You can still be hurt. You're human after all. But the hurt doesn't define you, consume you, or break you. It passes through you like weather passes through sky, intense but temporary, real, but not lasting. This is the paradox of true invulnerability. It comes not from avoiding pain, but from developing such a complete relationship with yourself that external pain cannot shake your internal foundation. The unshakable center. When you've done the work of integration, when you've faced your shadow and made it conscious, when you've stopped running from your own truth, something extraordinary happens. You develop what Jung called an unshakable center. This center is not a fortress that keeps the world out. It's a foundation so solid that you can let the world in without being destabilized by it. You can feel others' pain without taking it on. You can witness their anger without absorbing it. You can experience their judgment without being defined by it. The unshakable center allows you to remain compassionate without becoming codependent, to stay open without becoming vulnerable in the old way, to love deeply without losing yourself. This is not indifference, it's sovereignty. You care about others, but you don't need them to validate your existence. You love people, but you don't require their love to feel complete. You engage with life fully, but you don't depend on life's outcomes for your peace. From this center, you can face any storm because you're not trying to control the weather. You're simply remaining rooted in who you are. You can encounter any criticism because you've already had an honest conversation with yourself about your flaws. You can experience any rejection because your acceptance of yourself is not negotiable. Jung understood that this unshakable center is not something you build, it's something you uncover. It's always been there, buried under layers of conditioning, trauma, and false beliefs about who you should be. The work is not to create this center, but to excavate it. And once you've found it, once you've learned to live from it, the world's capacity to wound you diminishes dramatically. Not because you've become hard, but because you've become whole. The freedom of the integrated. The final gift of Jung's approach to invulnerability is freedom. Not the freedom from feeling, but the freedom to feel everything without being destroyed by it. Not the freedom from pain, but the freedom to move through pain without being stopped by it. When you're no longer afraid of your own emotions, when you've integrated your shadow, when you're living from your unshakable center, you become free in a way that most people never experience. Free to be authentic in every situation. Free to speak your truth regardless of others' reactions. Free to love without guarantees. Free to live without the constant fear of being hurt. This freedom is magnetic. It draws people to you because they can sense that you're not trying to get something from them. Approval, validation, love. You already have what you need within yourself, so your interactions with others become genuine rather than transactional. But perhaps most importantly, this freedom allows you to respond to life from choice rather than compulsion. When you're no longer driven by the need to avoid pain or seek approval, when you're no longer reactive to others' emotions or opinions, you become the author of your own experience. Jung called this individuation, becoming the individual you were meant to be rather than the person others needed you to be. And when you achieve this, something miraculous happens. Nothing and nobody can hurt you in the old way ever again. Not because you've become impervious to pain, but because you've become bigger than any pain that comes your way. Not because you don't care, but because your caring comes from fullness rather than emptiness. Not because you're perfect, but because you've made peace with your imperfection. This is Jung's ultimate promise, that you can become someone who walks through life without fear, who loves without conditions, who remains centered regardless of circumstances. Someone who has integrated all aspects of themselves into a whole that cannot be broken by any external force. If you've made it this far, it's because something within you recognizes this possibility. Something in you is ready to stop running from your shadow and start integrating it. Ready to stop seeking invulnerability through numbness and start finding it through wholeness. The question is, are you willing to face everything you've been avoiding about yourself? Are you ready to stop being the victim of your own unconscious wounds? Are you prepared to do the work of integration that will make you truly unshakable? Because once you understand that the wound and the healing both lie within you, everything changes. The world doesn't become less challenging. You become more capable of meeting its challenges from a place of wholeness rather than woundedness. Comment below. I choose integration over protection. Let's see how many are ready to become truly invulnerable through the courage to face themselves completely. Remember, true invulnerability is not about building walls. It's about becoming so whole that there's nowhere for external wounds to land. And that journey begins the moment you decide to stop running from yourself and start running toward the fullness of who you really are.